You're on the John Fredericks Radio Network, and joining us now is Rich Anderson. Rich is the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. Rich, welcome. Great to have you.
Good morning, John, and thank you for the work you're doing in Georgia. Thank you. You're doing the Lord's work.
Well, to God's ears from your lips, thank you. We've been here for 6 weeks, and it's been quite the odyssey. 20 cities in 20 days have been all over the state, and trying to bring light, shine a light, my friend, where there's darkness. Speaking of darkness, what on earth is going on with your nominating process in Virginia on the Republican side for the 2021 state offices? First, it was supposed to be a primary, we thought. Then they voted in a convention. Then Amanda chased the front runner, said she's going to run as an independent. Now they're thinking about going back and changing it back to a primary. What on earth is going on in Virginia, Rich?
Well, what's going on is the State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the Republican Party of Virginia, consists of about 80 people from around the state elected to their seats through various mechanisms. And we meet every 4 months. Always the December meeting in these years before elections is when, for statewide candidates, is when we make a decision about the method to be used. And it comes down to a binary choice, either conventions or primaries. We had a marathon, and I mean marathon, 8-hour virtual session on the Zoom platform on Saturday, December 5th. And at the end of that discussion, the majority on the State Central Committee voted to do a convention. And so we're off and running to the convention. But what must happen first, before we can get into detailed planning, we have a follow-on need to work a change in the party plan. That's our defining document, our rules and regulations on how we work. And we have to specify exactly how we're going to do that. The predictions are that the COVID environment, the governor's COVID environment lockdowns will probably be in place in some shape, fashion, or form when we get into the nomination season. And therefore, we've got to talk about what type of convention, and notionally, the group is probably going to want to gravitate to an unassembled drive-through convention, much like was done on August 15th of this year at our state convention.
So unassembled means like there's not going to be 25,000 people packed into the Richmond Coliseum or in JMU University like we've had in the past. It's going to be like your own convention, right? Or like the one at the 7th or the 5th, those congressional districts where you register as a delegate, you go through that process, you pay your fee to the Republican Party if there is one in your area, you sign up, and then on given day you drive to one of many locations in the state, like you did in your race for chairman, and you go to the polling location, and there's no speeches. All that's been done by video, and you go in and you put your ballot in the box and you leave, right? I mean, that's basically
correct.
the way it works.
The day of convention is simply a vote day. All of the predecessor activities of a conventional, traditional, assembled convention that we're familiar with have already been taken care of virtually. And so we've got to make a decision how we're going to do that, and that's really about the only option. It's roughly akin to, it's not exactly the same, but akin to a firehouse primary.
But the difference is you have to be a delegate, right? You have to go through.
Right. For firehouse primary, you just go in and vote like a publicly run primary. And I don't profess to be an expert on these because I always ran in a state-run primary during my House of Delegates years. But nonetheless, with that process, you simply just show up and vote. However, if we do a disassembled convention, an unassembled convention, the elements is precisely the same as an assembled traditional under one roof convention, is that everybody applies to be a delegate through the conventional application processes in their unit where they're vetted, and then they are designated as delegate, and then they are permitted to go and cast their ballot.
Look, we thought that there was going to be a primary because of all the shenanigans with the conventions that are gone on, Rich, and I know that both of us have the same view. We believe in the primary process, and probably I'm a little bit stronger than you on it. I think that conventions have torn the soul out of the party, and they've turned it into the ash heap it is, the dumpster fire it is. Having said that, I'm also a realist. So you had a vote. The final vote was 41-28, so it was not even close. You voted for a primary. Now you have to go through the rules process. A lot of people told me that they voted for a convention in lieu of a primary, even though they thought a primary was better. They told me they changed their vote to stop Amanda Chase. This is what people told me. I'm not advocating it. I'm just feeding it back. Maybe 6 people told me this. I was for a primary. I changed my vote to go to a convention to stop Amanda Chase because in a crowded primary, Amanda's going to be the nominee, and she'll take the whole ticket down. Okay. I think it's a bad idea because I think you start changing your votes to manipulate the outcome, you're going down a bad path. But I'm a big boy. I understand it. We lost. Now she threatens to run as an independent. Fine. Then they get upset. Then they say, well, maybe we should go back to a primary. Now she's going to run in a convention. Maybe she'll win that. So now you got basically Amanda Chase dictating what the party does. If you change this again, you might as well give her the keys, relinquish your chairmanship, make her the boss, make her the nominee, and be done with it. I mean, she's manipulating the whole process. I don't see how you can now go back and change what you've already done. How do you do that?
Well, I'm not an advocate, even though I believe very strongly that this convention cycle, this election cycle, we should have opted for a primary.
Yes.
Simply because I thought it was well suited to this particular cycle. That said, the majority voted for a convention, and so where I am now is I chair the State Central Committee as well as the Republican Party of Virginia, and I believe that I have to choose a path where we signal consistency, predictability, reliability once we make a decision. So my particular preference, and I don't get the final vote on this, it is the 80 members of the State Central Committee, and the majority will rule, obviously. But I would prefer to press ahead, convene in early January. We're polling our members right now to determine an optimal date for most of them. And once we're through the holiday season, we actually tried to do it on the 19th of December, and it just wasn't good that close to Christmas for a significant number of folks. Not the majority of members, but a sufficient number that you would have had a large number of proxies representing those designated SEC members who couldn't be there. And I think that's a bad way to do business with a large number of proxies. So I believe we should get together so that our word is reliable. We announced, 10 days ago after the selection of a convention that that's the pathway we would take. And now we have roughly 10 candidates in the governor's race, 4 in the lieutenant governor's race, and 4 in the attorney general's race, who are now beginning at the front edge of planning their campaigns premised on a selection method of a convention. So I would like to do that. I personally am glad that Senator Chase made the decision she made because in the end, she's a conservative. And what I have pledged to all of these candidates, individually, face-to-face or in phone calls, in individual conversations, that I will do all I can, humanly possible, to ensure that we have a level playing field and our final candidate will be selected on the basis of merit. Each man or woman will have to run a winning campaign.
So Rich Anderson with us. Rich Anderson is the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia. So, Rich, you said that there's 10 candidates that have they filed or that are considering?
No, considering. There are those, and we all know most of the names. There are those who have either declared or those who are suspicioned that they will declare.
Okay, got it.
And I've even talked to the people, to the usual list of suspects.
Right.
And so I've spoken to them, and I think you're going to see announcements coming. I can't predict when. No one has told me a precise date when they're going to announce, but yes, there will be more announcements coming, and I think it will be a fairly crowded field.
Number one, a lot of people texted in and said they're voting for Amanda as an independent. Okay, Amanda's no longer running as an independent, guys, okay, and gals. Amanda is now running in the unassembled convention as it was voted on. So she abandoned the idea of running as an independent because people like me thought it was dumb and she was going to split the party and it made no sense and she couldn't win. So now she has decided to run in the format that the party has chosen. and she has a right to do that, just like she had a right to run as an independent. So Amanda Chase is running in that. She's got, 145,000 Facebook followers. Start there. You get a third of those that turn out, you win in a landslide. So she's still the favorite. Doesn't matter what convention you pick, right? So that's number one. Barry in Weir's Cave says, John, so ask Rich, with an unassembled convention, anyone can show up and vote at the designated place in your district, or only designated delegates allowed to vote?
It's the latter, only designated delegates, just as if we were having an assembled convention. So they have to step through their local selection process to be elected as a delegate to the state convention. The difference is we're not meeting under one roof at one time, 3,000 to 5,000 people. We instead are doing it at various dispersed locations around the state. And I might say that while earlier this year for the state convention, where I was elected as chairman on August 15th, that was done at 12 different voting locations around the state. My personal preference, again, I don't make this decision. We'll have a rules committee that will make these kinds of determinations, but I think we should increase those in order to decrease the travel time and the time burden on our individual delegates.
Right, and the way you pay for that is you're going to charge a filing fee, right? So if you file, you can charge what you want, and so that's how you can fund the various locations. So, if you're in Chesapeake, you're not driving 2 hours to go cast a ballot and leave, because the thing about the unassembled convention, you can have a convention in one location, and you can drive there, like I remember the one that was at, James Madison University in Harrisonburg, right? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
I forget who ran there. I think that was the presidential thing, and we were fighting crews and all that. Yeah,
it was 2016.
2016, and then Obenshane, my candidate, got beat for a state committee woman. Okay, so it was 4 hours or 5 hours from our house. Ann and I left the night before. But it's an event, right? It's an event. So we went the night before. We got together with friends for dinner. We had breakfast with the Obenshanes at their home. And then you went to the convention and you saw old friends. I did my radio show. It's an event, right? So you don't mind driving. The problem with an unassembled convention is you drive, you drop off your bat, and you leave. So if you got to drive 3 hours, it's like, why should I do that?
Mm-hmm.
And, give 6 hours up on a Saturday for what? To put a ballot in the box? Right?
Yep, that's pretty much it. But I do want to reduce those travel times, and I'm going to propose to our planning committee for this convention that we, in fact, do that. I just want it to be the least burden as possible to our delegates.
I have another question from Amy in Fairfax. What about military voters? Can they vote in this unassembled convention, and if so, how do they do it?
This is one of the reasons that, I prefer a primary. Let me give you an example. My very first convention, I was still on active duty. My wife was a delegate in the Prince William County delegation to the 2008 state convention in Richmond, assembled under one roof. A huge conclave gathered and nominated former Governor Jim Gilmore as our nominee for the United States Senate that year. So my wife goes, along with 100 and some friends of mine from Prince William County. They sit in the designated area for the Prince William delegation, while I, because I was still in a military uniform, I spent 30 years in the Air Force, and this was at the tail end of my career, I had to sit in a roped-off area with velvet robes and stanchions, me and about a dozen other people, and wear a badge that said observer. And that's not because of party rules. That's because of a DODI, that's a Department of Defense instruction that forbids active military personnel. And per capita, we have the largest number of military personnel stationed on Virginia soil than any other location in the country. So therefore, this has impact. And as a result, I could only sit in this roped-off area with velvet ropes and stanchions and not, even though I had been wearing a uniform in the military for, at that time, 29 years, could not vote in my home state for my candidate of choice. Again, not because of party rules, but because of prohibitions by DOD instruction. And the reason for that is simply because in a free society, there is a limit on the amount of political activity, partisan activity that should take place on the part of those who wear the cloth of the country.
You're fighting for your country. You're serving America, and you're not able to vote in the convention, and you have to sit there for 8 hours with an observer badge.
Yes, and that was my introduction to Virginia politics, and so that has colored my feeling about all this. But I come back to something you said. You said you're realistic, and I am also realistic. I try to be pragmatic in executing my duties as chairman, and I believe we should simply move forward with the original plan, because it will certainly be a contentious, difficult process if we engage in a revisit of the decision for a convention.
No, you can't change it again, Rich, and I appreciate your leadership. And I just want everybody to grasp what we're saying. Rich Anderson is pro-primary. John Fredericks is the most pro-primary person you're ever going to meet in Virginia. I think conventions have destroyed the party and ripped out its soul and put us in the ridiculous position that we're in. So I hate them. I loathe them. I think they're rigged, and I think they're a disaster. Having said that, you cannot go back and change the respect Rich's leadership here, because people are now planning to run in a convention. That was the vote. It was 41-28. It wasn't close. It's not like it won by one vote and somebody was in the bathroom, okay? They voted for a convention. Have your convention. Make the rules fair. Let Amanda run in it, and we'll let the best person win and figure it out. To go back now and change it again, and I don't care how they spin the thing, the reason for changing it is going to be reacting to Amanda's decision to now run in the convention. It's insane. I mean, you can't run a party based on what one candidate does. It was insane at the beginning. It's insane now. And, Rich, I appreciate your strong leadership and standing firm on it, because I think changing it again is asinine. And then if you change it again, what? Then there's going to be another movement to change it a third time? It's a convention. It's unassembled. Have it. Let the best person win. Right, Rich?
Right. You're exactly right. I guess, I'm in a position where perhaps maybe I irritated some pro-convention folks because I publicly articulated my support for primaries. Perhaps I have now irritated some of our adherents to the other process, simply because I'm saying, let's be consistent. Let's be predictable. Let's deliver on what the majority said we would deliver on. And so maybe I'm in the right place if I've irritated people on both sides. That's not my intention. My intention is actually to run a fair and level process in the SEC governing space, and also to run a fair and level process for our candidates who run for office, whether it's at one of the statewide offices or whether it is for the House of Delegates or the Senate of Virginia. That's the way ahead. That's where people have trust and confidence in party processes.
Leaders take positions. You ran for chairman to be a leader. You've taken a position. Now you've taken a position against changing it. This is what a leader does. This is what the party needs. We might not agree, but I'll tell you this, Rich Anderson, you're doing a fabulous job. I'm totally impressed with everything you've done. I've seen your work ethic. I don't know how many events that I did during the campaign. You were there. You were in so many of the events that I was there, some that was shocking. I mean, you even went to Bannon's event someplace in Southwest Georgia we put on with the Young Republicans. So you've been everywhere. I appreciate your leadership. And, you didn't take this job to make friends. You took it to make a difference. If you want a friend, get a dog. Rich, John Fredericks Radio Network, thanks for being with us.
Keep them clean in Georgia, John.